It is a fun project and a testament of my skill. And once I realized this, I changed the question to be less limited and focused. Rather than imposing such heavy self-deadlines on myself, I loosened them. And I would much rather, I felt happier while working on it once I'd actually achieved this. I would much rather hand in a project that I feel as though I had fun with researching, and I feel like I've presented a project that I feel like I've learned skills rather than just presenting the physical best aspects. Because if I hide up all my flaws, then if I learn too many skills, it's not going to be representative of how I work at university. I can learn the skills, but I've got to be happy while doing it. I've got to be using my own natural flaws as a counterbalance to all the successes. But I did change the question. The original question I had was, is the fear of missing out having a negative influence on the mental health of young adults with the rise of media influences to the question we now have today? And I do feel happier. I felt as though at the time I was a rat trapped in a maze, looking for a piece of cheese. But every time I bumped into a wall, it wasn't a wall that was the edge of a maze or one that was there. It was a wall that I had built myself. I was blocking myself into a single point that kind of ignored my creative freedom and ignored quite a lot of my expression. And I'm thankful that I changed it. I do believe that this was one of the greater points of my EPQ. And it was more of like the personal experience of everything that's kind of come to change. And even with my mental health at stake, with certain like rough points of the EPQ process, I've persisted. And this kind of determined like aspect of me has now kind of resurged itself after a long time of been laying dormant. And I believe that there's a quote that should summarize this quite well. It's not that I'm so smart. It's that I just stay with problem solving, which was said by Albert Einstein. I don't believe that I'm intelligent. I don't believe that I'm smart. I just have a tendency to stick with problems for longer. And the whole point of this quote isn't to just gloat, it's to talk about your tenacity. If you get stuck with a problem, some people walk away and stop looking. But with myself, I look at a problem, and unless it physically wears me down and breaks me down to nothing, I get back up and I fight. I find a way to overcome these problems. I find a way to talk about these problems. And I find a way to kind of sidestep, but still kind of overcome. It's all about, no matter how much you tackle an issue, so long as you're able to provide valid, rational basis, or to provide a rational basis for why you've overcome it, using the experiences that you've had, it changes the game. And I'm thankful that I learned that I'm a lot more tenacious than I think. I like to hide in corners whenever I used to get into an issue, but I think now that I've had the complete self-control of what I could study, when I did it, even with all the setbacks of my own, negative parts of my character, I still believe that my positive aspects have now kind of made a resurgence after years of lying dormant in the heart of my soul. And where do I go from here? There's many pathways where I could have went. So many different routes of learning these skills, doing the presentation. Well, as I explained in the start, I'm going to university, and I want to do psychology. But I've also got to acknowledge that I walk out of this room with satisfaction, even though I might not feel it at this second. Even particularly looking back at this, at the minute, I feel satisfaction. I feel satisfied overcoming a hurdle in the grand scheme of things. With every failure that I've had is another hurdle that I've overcome. I learned new skills to tackle it. If the hurdle was to jump higher, I would jump higher in response, and I keep jumping at that height until the next hurdle comes up. And these issues, I'm going to be self-reflective of. And between now and when I go to university, I have a lot of time and a lot of opportunities to actually reflect on this skill. And it's the skills like, maybe my research wasn't strong. Maybe my writing skills could have used a bit more improvement. Maybe I could have taken time to make sure that my essay questions actually seemed a bit more grounded in reality. And the two things that I do need to do is focus on getting the deadlines down, which currently with how I did it at university is not going to fly. I need to, like, even though I might just be barely getting away with it now, and still delivering a project that even some other people consider relatively alright, it won't last, and it won't end up getting me through university, specifically with what I want to do, because psychology is such a competitive and such an intensive skill required subject. It's incredibly competitive, and even if I have a stamp on my application that basically goes, I've done the EPQ, it has basically just gone to show everyone that there have been failures and there have been triumphs, but I've learned skills. I have the skills. I'm a better dominant candidate in other parts. And even if I don't end up going to university, the skills, like even giving the presentation now, or even just learning how to reference, cite, and source, that's all very good skills to have in a professional workplace, especially when you're looking at giving presentations, when you're making articles, when you're quoting things. It's important to have these skills. But the part of my life that this has been arguably the hardest part of my education, at least for now. This is an external project. I had the chance to not do this, but I did. And I believe that it would have helped me in my education, and it does, and it has helped me, just not in the ways that I had originally anticipated at the start. But what has happened is that it has reignited my love for psychology. I love the subject. I absolutely adore every single minimal aspect of this thing. From learning all the little things like how the human mind goes into great distress when being separated from disconnected from groups for a good while, or how social media acts as supplementary dopamine hits, which is why it leads to social media addiction, and why the fear of missing out is such an incredibly powerful tool. And in the end, I'm going to walk out of this room not just satisfied with the EPQ, but satisfied with my personal growth as well. And with everything that all the hurdles that I've had to overcome, I am thankful. And I am salty about this. But I think we also need to, I've said all about this, I could have done this, I could have done that. And I feel like we do need to talk about what I would have done differently. And starting from the start, I would have initially changed my question. I would have actually gone back and looked at something not related to the fear of missing out. I would have done a different question. I'm not even sure what on. I would have done it on psychology, but I don't have many general ideas. What I would have done as well is I would have set myself rigorous scheduled breaks and tasks. I would have had deadlines that I would have had to have hit, otherwise I would have risked sacrificing the whole project. I need to get into that workplace mentality, because right now the only way I can really do it is by being in the presence and in the position of a college, or I have to be in the environment to thrive. At home, it's a different story. I can't. And I feel like now that I've learned these skills, I feel like I could have, if I would have changed a few things, I think I would have been so much better at this project. And we can sit here and talk about what I could have done, what I could have improved on. There are many things, and frankly, even though I should have taken this section to explain a lot of them, they've been mentioned quite a lot just throughout as little supplementary points through the rest of the presentation. But now I return everything to you. Does anybody have any questions at all? So we're moving on to the Q&A part. Anybody have any questions?
Anyone else have any questions?
I guess I have a few. So obviously I also have a pretty big interest in psychology. What would be the positive effects that FOMO could have on people with anxiety?
With anxiety, it's not currently but one of the key aspects of how I came to one of the establishing ties between FOMO and mental health is that I had used sociological concepts and psychological concepts like belongingness theory, which is basically to go and show that humans need to actually keep in contact. And FOMO is a way of it's kind of like a natural implication to keep people in contact with each other. It's a form of regulation. But unfortunately, there is the anxiety that comes with FOMO. It's a double-edged sword, and it's not really well researched at the time. But with some of the research pieces that I had looked at, I think it was a study by Lou that I had included in my essay. It was that when people are looking at friends, they feel less anxious. When they feel as if when people are doing things, if it's a group that you have no ties to, you might feel a bit more anxiety. But if it's like a group of friends, you feel kind of interconnected. It gives you a topic to talk about next time you see them, even if you weren't invited to go and get drinks or to go and hang out for lunch. It's a talking point. It's more so a thing that brings people together, but also has negative aspects as well. And I hope I've at least addressed the question in a way. Well, you can say if I have, because I feel like I probably should go into more